Good day, Miss McIntosh. My name is Amisha Mongol, and my group members are Joanne George and Marixia Polino. Our presentation today is based on the Passover ritual in Judaism for comparative religion. We do hope you enjoy. For this presentation, we'd like to start by giving a brief introduction to Judaism, and then we'll get into the Passover ritual, where we will define Passover, talk about the origin of Passover, and describe the ritual, specifically looking at the participants, activities, significance, and expected outcomes associated with Passover. Finally, we'll briefly touch on Passover customs around the world and some biblical texts central to the ritual. So let's get into it.
Judaism. History began over 4,000 years ago in the Middle East, which today constitutes Israel and Palestine. Judaism is known as a monastic religion. Followers of Judaism are called Jews. Jews believe in one God who revealed himself through ancient prophets. Example, the first prophet Abraham. They believed that God made a special covenant with Abraham and that his descendants were chosen people who would create a great nation. Therefore, the history of Judaism is vital to understanding the Jewish faith, which consists of a rich heritage of law, culture, and tradition.
Defining Passover. Passover is really a celebration of freedom. Every spring, Jewish people all over the world gather together for this special holiday. It began about 3,000 years ago. Jews remember a time when they were slaves in Egypt. They escaped from slavery and the gift of their freedom. They have much to celebrate as they recall the angel of death passing over their blood-stained doorways, thus sparing their firstborn from death. Passover comes either in March or April, but it always begins on the 15th of Nisan, the 7th month of the Jewish year. Jews observe Passover for 7 or 8 days. Many Jewish families get ready for Passover before the holiday begins, as they clean their homes and buy special food for the celebration.
So now we will briefly look at the history of the Passover ritual. The origin of the Passover ritual is documented in the book of Exodus. It is told that the Pharaoh enslaved the Israelites and drowned their firstborn sons in the Nile. However, baby Moses was rescued and adopted into the Egyptian royal family. As an adult, Moses killed an Egyptian slave master and fled to the Sinai Peninsula for 40 years. In exile, Moses was chosen by God to return to Egypt and free the Israelites. He returned and tried to explain this to the Pharaoh to no avail. Each time the Pharaoh shunned Moses, God unleashed a plague, and there were 10 plagues: water turning into blood, frogs, lice, flies, livestock, boils, hail, locusts, darkness, and death of the firstborn. For the 10th plague, the Israelites marked their doors with the blood of lamb to indicate themselves, so the angel of death will pass over their households and spare them during the slaughter of every firstborn son in Egypt. The Israelites also ate a specific meal during the slaughter that included roasted lamb, unleavened bread, and bitter herbs, among other things. And after the 10th plague, the Israelites were freed and wandered the Sinai desert for 40 years until they reached their ancestral home in Canaan, which would later be known as the land of Israel. Therefore, Passover takes its name from when the angel of death passed over the Israelites' homes, and the Passover feast is a constant repetition of the meal that the Israelites ate during the slaughter. The ritual is a testament of the slavery and struggles that the Israelites endured and marks the beginning of their freedom under the leadership of God and Moses.
Passover participants. Individuals who ascribe to the Jewish faith celebrate Passover. Some figures central in Judaism and Passover include God, the Almighty Father, the Israelites, the Jewish people, Pharaoh, that year, Pharaoh's daughter, Moses, the deliverer, Aaron, Moses' brother, Yocheved, Moses' mother, Miriam, Moses' sister, Shiphrah and Puah, midwives, Zipporah, Moses' wife. Passover activities. The celebration of Passover is prescribed in the book of Exodus. The holiday is often celebrated for 7 days in Israel. Traditional activities include the reading of the Haggadah. A Haggadah is a book that's read during the Seder that tells the story of the Passover. The Passover Seder is a home ritual blending religious rituals of food, song, and storytelling. Drinking of 4 cups of wine, eating matzah, partaking of symbolic foods, and reclining in celebration of freedom. Another Passover activity is called the Afikomen. As part of the Passover celebration, there are traditionally 3 pieces of matzah set at the middle of the Seder table. The middle piece is called the Afikomen. Thereafter, the Afikomen is to be broken into 2 pieces. The bigger piece is then wrapped in a napkin and hidden somewhere in the house. Representation of the Afikomen include Jews view this as symbolic of redemption from suffering. It is seen as a reference to the Passover sacrifice that used to be offered at the Temple of Jerusalem. It is seen as a reminder that the poor must always set something aside for the next meal, or as a reminder that there is more to explore in life itself. Some places where the Afikomen can be hidden are: it can be taped under a dining room chair, under the tablecloth, behind a picture on the wall, on a bookshelf, back in the box of the matzah, outside in the mailbox, or any place where the children can be involved in finding the Afikomen. Another Passover activity includes asking of 4 particular questions. Since temple time, the Passover Seder has begun with the child or children asking 4 questions which can be explained when reference to the chapter Exodus and can be retold in the Haggadah. These 4 questions are often known by the opening words Ma Nishtana, meaning what is different. In other words, what makes the night different from all other nights? So the 4 questions should be started with Ma Nishtana. Ma Nishtana, on all nights we need not dip even once. On this night, we do this twice. That's one question, and the answer to the question, meaning the salt water in which we dip the carcass, represents the tears we cried while in Egypt. Similarly, the charoset into which the bitter herbs are dipped remind us of the cement we used to create the bricks in Egypt. The second question, Ma Nishtana. On all nights, we eat shamets or matzah, and on this night only matzah. Matzah was the bread of slaves and poor. It was cheap to produce and easy to make. Matzah also commemorates the fact that the bread did not have enough time to rise when the Jews hastily left Egypt. Number 3 question. Ma nishtana. On all nights, we eat any kind of vegetables, and on this night, only maror. The maror, which is the bitter herbs, remind us of the bitterness of slavery in Egypt. The 4th question. Ma nishtana. On all nights, we eat sitting upright or reclining, and on this night, we all recline. The answer is, on all nights, we eat sitting upright or reclining, and on this night, we recline because this commemorates our freedom by reclining on cushion like royalty.
So, why is Passover significant? Passover is significant to Jewish adherents because it commemorates the deliverance of the Israelites from slavery and celebrates the springtime advent of new life. Earlier in the presentation, we mentioned that during the 10th plague, the Israelites ate a specific meal that has been replicated ever since, and that's the Seder feast. And this feast contains a number of food items that each symbolizes the Israelites' slavery and then freedom. The Seder feast is significant because it is designed to highlight the struggles and the liberation of the Israelites from bondage. So you might be wondering, what does the Seder feast contain? Why is each item significant? And what does each item symbolize? Well, during Passover, Jews eat unleavened bread or flatbread called matzah, which signifies the urgency of the Israelites when they left Egypt. They didn't have time to bake their breads properly, so they took it out and left before it had risen. So unleavened bread represents that sense of urgency. And matzah also represents humility. Normally, bread rises when yeast is added, and this is likened to an inflated ego or a risen ego. So because unleavened bread does not rise, adherents use it as a symbol to represent humility. Their egos are not inflated. Wine is also important to Jews during Passover and the Seder feast. It is said that God described the exodus of the Israelites in 4 expressions. I will take you out, I will save you, I will redeem you, and I will take you as a nation. And one source says that these expressions are significant because they represent salvation from harsh labor, salvation from servitude, the parting of the sea after which the Israelites felt redeemed and no longer feared the Pharaoh, and becoming a nation at Sinai. So adult Jews honor these 4 expressions by drinking 4 cups of wine over the duration of Passover. In terms of the actual Seder plate during the feast, there are 6 significant items. This is a picture of the Seder plate, and I'll begin at the 12 o'clock position and move in a clockwise direction explaining each item. The first food item is maror or bitter herbs, usually horseradish, which represents the bitterness of slavery. The second item is zeroah or a shank bone. This is usually the roasted shank bone of a lamb with some meat in it. It alludes to the verse, I will redeem you with an outstretched arm. It also alludes to the sacrificial lamb eaten during the 10th plague. However, the zerua is not eaten during Passover. Next, we have the haroset, which is a sweet paste of fruits, nuts, and wine that represents the clay, mortar, and brick, all of the harsh labor that the Israelites endured as enslaved people. Its sweetness contrasts the bitter herbs to also signify the sweetness of liberation. There is also another bitter herb, or hazaret, usually lettuce, which also signifies the bitterness of slavery. Then we have any green, non-bitter vegetable or karpas, usually parsley, which is dipped into salt water twice and then eaten, which represents the Israelites' tears. And last but not least is the boiled egg, or beitza, which represents the cycle of life and mourning the destruction of the holy temple. Essentially, adherents perform Passover as a way to thank God, celebrate the liberation of the Israelites, and show respect for them. It is also done to educate each generation on the history of their ancestors by discussing the events described in the book of Exodus, how these events shaped Judaism, and the struggles that Jews continue to face in modern times.
Passover outcomes. After saying the Seder's grace, there is a custom of placing an extra cup of wine in the middle of the table. The front door is open to welcome the presence of Elijah the prophet into the home. Persons do not drink from this cup of wine. This custom is a symbol of hope. Elijah's return is said to prelude the Messiah's arrival. Another belief for the invitation extended to Elijah the prophet is that he provides confirmation that males attending the Seder are all circumcised. After all, Elijah is said to be present at the circumcision ceremony of each Jewish child. At this ceremony, he provides affirmation that Jewish family has correctly upheld the commandments given for circumcision. Jewish families also recall or are reminded that all the male was circumcised on the night before leaving Egypt in order to eat of the Passover lamb. Different Passover customs from around the world. If we look at the history of the Jews after the destruction of the Second Temple, they were a nation without a country for about 2,000 years. They developed a variety of Passover customs, often adopting them from their host cultures. For example, in Egypt, one of their readings at the Seder is called the Bread of Affliction. During this reading, a sack containing a piece of matzah is passed around the table. As each person receives the sack, that person places it on the right shoulder. The Seder leader asks, "Where are you from?" And the person replies, "Egypt." The leader continues, "Where are you going?" Switching the sack to the left shoulder, the person answers, "Jerusalem." Another example of a different Passover custom is in Hungary. Some of the Jews there decorate the Seder table with their gold and silver jewelry to recall the items of precious metal that the Egyptians gave the Israelites after the 10th plague. For Jews in Morocco, the Seder leader carries the Seder tray from person to person, holding it over each person's head while declaring that the person is now free. Also, instead of placing a cup of wine on the table for Elijah, they place a large ornate chair with brocaded pillows near the table as they wait for the prophet's arrival. For Jews in Europe, while mentioning the 10 plagues at the Seder table, Jews in Europe dip their pinky fingers into their glass of wine and transfer 10 drops onto their plate. That is, 1 drop of wine per plague. It is said that it represents God's tears because the Egyptians suffered through the plagues. However, they were God's children also.
Passover Seder, or in American, Seders, come in many forms, from those filled with skits to those lasting all night to those rushed through in an effort to get to the food. Whatever your Seder, there are some symbols and customs you'll see most of the time. In the middle of the table, there's wine, a stack of matzah, and a cup of wine for Elijah the prophet, who's said to visit every Seder. Additionally, there's the Seder plate. It can be anything from a fancy ceramic piece imported from Israel to a makeshift number hacked together from picnicware. On the Seder plate, a shank bone, egg, bitter herb, charoset, karpas, and a piece of lettuce. Each thing symbolizes a different aspect of Passover. Also, everyone has a Haggadah, the book or printouts that guides you through the Seder. There are tons of different Haggadahs. Minimal and elaborate, you can get them in Hebrew, English, or both, with any kind of commentary you like, from feminist to environmental to Hasidic to political. There are versions for kids, for interfaith groups, and for activists. And of course, people remix the tradition every which way to make it their own. Seder literally translates to order, so let's talk about that. There's a few traditions to start. Blessing the wine, washing your hands, dipping veggies into salt water, and then breaking the middle matzah. Half of it, called the afikoman, gets hidden surreptitiously. Then comes the main event, the telling of the Exodus from Egypt. Or more accurately, the main event is an interactive reading of rabbinical discussions about how to remember the Exodus. When the Seder was put together, the rabbis assumed everyone going in knew the story, so it was silly to just retell it. Instead, they went deeper, and in doing so, created a holiday that is about memory. How do people, today, relate to these themes of liberation and redemption? At many Seders, people go around the table and read a paragraph each from the Haggadah. People add songs and discussions about what happened back then and about parallels with today's world. Seders around the world may include diverse traditions, like hitting your neighbor with green onions, pouring water on the floor, or pulling out a bag of plushy plates. And overachievers hold all-night Seders. One famous part of the Seder is the 4 questions, where the youngest child at the table asks, Ma nishtana? If you are the youngest child, you can practice here. Learning songs is a great way to prep for the Seder. If you have to pick one, make it the chorus to Dayenu. It's one word, and you can learn it here. After the storytelling piece, there's a few more customs. More hand-washing, eating matzah, then maror, something bitter like horseradish, then a matzah maror sandwich, and then dinner. If you're at a Sephardi Seder, there might be kitniyot included. People's strenuousness about keeping kosher for Passover varies widely. For instance, some folks won't eat anything made with wet matzah, including the Passover staple, matzah balls. After the main meal and dessert, there's the search for the afikoman. Whoever finds it gets a prize, and everyone else gets the ability to finish the meal with a tiny piece of matzah. Now, just being honest, a lot of seders peter out here with tired kids and matzah kugel-induced food comas. But at a full seder, you continue with Birkat HaMazon, the grace after meals, followed by opening the door for Elijah, a special set of songs of praise called Hallel, more wine, and the famous closeout next year in Jerusalem. Then, 2 popular bonus songs are Echad Mi Yodea and Chad Gadia. If you want to learn those, click over there. Haven't had enough of seder yet? Lucky you! Outside of Israel, traditional Jews celebrate 2 nights of seders, and there are lots of other variations out there. It's a quirky holiday. Chag Kasher V'Sameach. Happy Passover. If you liked this intro, we hope you subscribe to get notified when more videos on Passover, other holidays, and all sorts of other Jewish subjects are released.
Okay, so we hope you enjoyed that concise but comprehensive video about the Passover Seder. As a group, we really enjoyed that video and we just had to share it with you all.
Passover Seder, or in American, Seder.
Biblical readings for Passover celebration. Readings are taken from both the Haftorah and the Torah. If you recall, the Torah consists of 5 books, which are Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy, while the Haftorah consists of the books of the former and latter prophets. These readings cover the instructions from Moses to be saved from the 10 plagues, the Exodus, Passover laws and restrictions, appointed times on the Jewish calendar for the Passover celebration, the 10 Commandments, and to always remember the Passover for generations to come.
It is evident that the Passover ritual is revered in Judaism. Judaism began over 4,000 years ago when Moses freed the Israelites, and Passover blossomed into an annual celebration from the seeds of slavery. Jewish adherents unite for a week's worth of festivities and feasts to honor their ancestors, educate each generation on the meaning of Passover, and discuss social issues that contemporary Jews face. During this time, Jews follow a strict diet consisting of unleavened bread, wine, and symbolic foods of the Seder feast. They read from the Haggadah and perform the Afikomen. Jews also extend their hospitality and pour a glass of wine for the prophet Elijah each Passover and read specific biblical texts. Although there are slight variations in the ritual worldwide, it is safe to end by saying that Passover ritual is a testament to the rich heritage of culture and tradition sacred in Judaism. These are our references for your viewing pleasure, where you can get more information. Alright, so that brings us to the end of our presentation. We do hope that it was enjoyable and informative. Thank you.